Good afternoon to our Jeans Hospital community gathered here today, physicians, staff, and honored guests. My name is Mark Hurwitz, President and CEO of Jeans Hospital, and I'd like to welcome you to this very special event to pay tribute to an inspiring woman who was ahead of her time. She was a philanthropist, a leader, an advocate for healthcare and education, and the benefactress of Jeans Hospital, Anna T. Jeans. We honor Anna today with the installation of a historical marker on our campus. The youngest born child of a wealthy Quaker family in Philadelphia, Anna dedicated her life to causes focused on the health and social welfare of others. At a time when hospitals often were regarded with fear, known as places where infection and disease spread rampantly, she envisioned a facility where the sick and dying could receive more specialized, humane care. Anna created an endowment upon her death in 1907 to build a hospital for those with cancerous, nervous, and disabling ailments. Its mission would align with the Quaker philosophy of treating each patient compassionately as a whole person. Jeans Hospital opened in 1928, built on Anna's family farm right here in Northeast Philadelphia. More than 90 years later, the clinical services, technology, and research that continue on this site still reflect her progressive thinking.
And now I'm going to read Dr. Calamia's letter. Greetings to all of you on behalf of Governor Tom Wolf and the members and staff of the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission, the Commonwealth's official history agency. My name is Lynn Calamia. I'm speaking on behalf of Lynn Calamia, and I serve as an appointed member of the State Historic Preservation Board, so I suppose I bring greetings from them as well. And as always, I am glad to represent Pennsylvania in this important work. I want to congratulate you on dedicating the newest of nearly 2,500 historical markers that have been erected across the state. These markers chronicle the people, places, and events that have made this Commonwealth notable. The Historical Marker Program, which has had its beginnings in 1946, is now one of the most popular programs of the Historical and Museum Commission. Each marker establishes an important link to the past. It is my hope that reading this marker, which gives people only a few words about Anna T., will not be the end of the story, but will instead provide encouragement for further learning about her impact on Pennsylvania and beyond. Historical markers across the Commonwealth represent single threads and are woven into the great tapestry which is our rich and diverse heritage. I know I speak on behalf of our commission and staff when I extend my appreciation to those involved in advocating for this historic marker, and for your hard work in establishing a landmark to remind people of Anna T. Jeans' important and timeless accomplishments. Thank you very much, and thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's my pleasure to join you to mark this momentous occasion. I'm Martin Ogletree, chair of the Anna T. Jeans Foundation. Our foundation's mission is to sustain the Quaker values of the foundation's namesake, who is the original benefactor of Jeans Hospital, and to provide for the health and wellness of the community that relies on Jeans Hospital. Like our hospital colleagues, all of us who support the foundation carry on the important legacy of Anna T. Jeans through our work. This includes the foundation's funding of various projects and nonprofit agencies that promote the health and wellness of the communities in the Jeans Hospital service area. We are thrilled to see this historical marker erected here on this campus. Not only does it honor a key sponsor in the history of Jeans Hospital, but it also recognizes her work and the causes to which Anna T. Jeans ardently dedicated herself. Her vision and support continue to be relevant today, 200 years after her birth. They enable us to enhance the lives of many people. Her legacy of promoting positive change in healthcare, education, and social issues continues on, and we are so proud to honor her with this historical marker.
And good afternoon to all of you who have gathered here today on this really special occasion. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm Bob Lefevre, and I'm the chair of Jeans Hospital, and I have been on the Jeans board for 40 years. Soon not to be on it any longer, but as I was just saying ahead of time, when I first came on, I and Roger Wood over there, and Clark Frame, another one here, when we came on, we lowered the average age of the board members. We're long past that. When I learned that our nomination for this historical marker was approved, I was very pleased because the process to achieve such an honor is extremely competitive, and I'm sure that there are many worthy candidates all the time. Our committee, headed by the impressive Kay Sackett Fitzgerald, and thanks again, Kay, spent many hours in compiling the accomplishments of Anna Jeans, and in particular, her influence on the history of this hospital and on our larger community. This monument is one of just 5 new markers approved this year by the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission for locations throughout the city of Philadelphia, and one of just 18 across the entire state. Now, it proudly stands among more than 300 markers that grace Philadelphia, and more than 2,300 erected in Pennsylvania since the program's inception in 1946. That's 73 years ago. This marker not only celebrates the achievements of our founder, Anna Jeans, but also helps to preserve the rich heritage of Pennsylvania, as well as that of Jeans Hospital. It is a great source of pride for us all. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here. I have to say, though, at first I thought Anna was probably frowning at this whole thing, but I think she's probably blushing by now. So without further ado, I'd really like to begin by saying a lot of thanks, because that's always what happens first. A big shout out to Ann Rudloff. She captained this ship, and she really kept us all afloat. Thank you, Ann. We couldn't have done it without you. She's great at minutes and keeping everybody organized. Of course, there were the members of the board, the hospital administration and staff, the auxiliary, certainly Temple University Health System, Fox Chase Cancer Center, Swarthmore and Haverford Quaker History Collection, the archival sections at Temple, Hampton, and Tuskegee universities were really very helpful. I found lots of correspondence, actual written notes between George Frizzle, E.B. Du Bois, and Booker T. Washington, and Anna Thomas Jeans, talking about really intimate kinds of things like how her arm hurt her the last days of her life when she brought money, and they gave money then to these people for the Southern, what ultimately became the Southern Education Foundation. And I certainly couldn't have done it without the Pennsylvania Historical Commission staff, who really critiqued things. It was really wonderful. We know that Anna might very well be considered a quiet Quaker abolitionist. She really didn't want people to know much about her at all. She lost her mom at age 2, and her father and older siblings actually raised her. She did love to read. She corresponded with a very eclectic group of people, though I will say she's really hard to find the information, because you have to go find all the other people before you find hers. They kept it all. She didn't. She was interested in philosophy, philanthropy, local and world and national affairs. And you know, she traveled between her home in the city of brotherly love and Stapley Family Farm. At least that was until a part of the railroad crossed the property, and they never came back. Literally never came back. They left someone there to just kind of guard it. Never came back. 32 years. She wrote 2 books of poetry, which is not true. I got ahead of myself here, folks. She wrote 1 book of poetry called Fancy's Flight, and then she wrote a 2nd book, a religious book called The Sacrificer and the Non-Sacrificer. In correspondence that I read at Hampton and Tuskegee, the gentleman there admired Anna's business savvy and acumen, a woman born in 1822 who died in 1907, and that's one of the things that they admired her for, her business savvy and acumen. She lived, as did her family, during the Civil War, slavery, the Gilded Age, the Industrial Revolution, illness and disease, mass migrations of people from the north to the south, and from other parts of the world to the United States. She challenged the constraints of sex and gender at a time when 19th century women rarely had access to what was considered great wealth. As a single, never married woman, Anna wasn't dependent on male relatives. She outlived everyone in her immediate family to inherit the bulk of the family fortune, which was at the time estimated to be $5 million. Imagine a single woman, $5 million in that day and age. Before she died, she tried to give it all away, every penny of it. She bequeathed monies in the name of her siblings and herself. Her Quaker values and sense of social responsibility fueled her work toward the betterment of education, health, and care for the aged. I'd like to just give a couple of selected examples of what her largesse included. In terms of education, Mr. Pierce, who I hope gets a chance to come up and say a few words, from the Southern Education Foundation, will talk a little bit about what she did. But Anna gave $1 million back in the day for rural Southern education. She didn't want to go to the big universities and the colleges at the time. She wanted it to go for what became the Jeans supervisors and teachers, and it was to educate the little people, to educate the kids. That's what she wanted to do. She also, as part of her will, demanded basically a racially integrated board that administered what ultimately became the Jeans Fund. That's what she wanted. She had really famous people across the United States who were members of that board. That board ultimately was combined with others to become the Southern Education Foundation. I wanted to give just a couple of real quick examples of what we found today, which is one of the things we had to do as part of this marker. Using something called economic modeling techniques, a gentleman who did his PhD determined that the Jeans supervisors or teachers, and I use that term interchangeably because that's what they were referred to, actually closed, back in the days, the black-white literacy gap by 5%, just by giving that money, and increased by 5% the likelihood of securing funding for something called a Rosenwald School. The teachers, and this is in quotes, the Negro community often raised 50 to 80% of the money over and above the money for the Rosenwald schools to build these individual schools in the rural South. And a woman by the name of Virginia Randolph was the first Jeans supervisor. Something called the Henrico model of education actually spread worldwide. So what they did had more than an impact nationally and locally, it went international. Anna's brother, in terms of health, some of the things the family did. Anna's brother Jacob and two others established Hahnemann Hospital. That was an early homeopathic institution. I'm going to just keep sliding right over the piece about Hahnemann Hospital right now. The Jeans family supported the development of the Female Medical College of Pennsylvania, a place for Quaker and other like-minded women to study medicine. That facility is no longer in existence, but became certainly part of Drexel. Anna's brother Joseph, she was one of 10, so there were a lot of kids. He endowed the first chair of obstetrics and gynecology at the Female Medical College of Pennsylvania. And Anne and her sister Mary supported the Women's Homeopathic Group, the Home for Aged and Colored Persons, the Home for Destitute and Colored Children, Firemen's Association, soup kitchens, child care nurseries, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and that was just a few of the places that they supported. Anna herself personally died from what on her death certificate reads, scrofulous breast cancer. For those of you who don't know what that is, it is actually tuberculosis of the breast that mimics cancer. That's what we know today, all right? But what it did was allowed her and encouraged her to create the bequests that supported the creation and founding for, and this is from her will, the establishment and endowment of a general hospital or infirmary for cancerous, nervous, and disabling ailments, known today as Jean's Hospital, which was of course built on the former family Stapley farm. Anna's legacy still continues today and supports, who would think, a cremation fund and burial at Fair Hill Cemetery. All you gotta do is ask. That's what she believed in. In terms of the aged, she funded and provided property for Stapley Manor, a boarding home, which is now Wesley Enhanced Living at Stapley. She paid $12 a month. Even so, she bought it and paid for it. She paid $12 a month, and she paid a lot of the other people who lived there until they died. She took care of that. To this day, I've heard tell that workers will talk about Anna walking the halls of Stapley and checking up to ensure that everybody's well. They still believe she's there. When Anna died, I read this in the newspaper, one of the Philadelphia newspapers, and it was in Southern newspapers. The colored women and their children crowded outside the room where she lay in state and sang her favorite songs to celebrate her life. Her estate funded and continues to fund other nursing homes today. In summary, I'd like to paraphrase from an article in the Norfolk News, a Southern newspaper, that was dated 12/29/1921. I took a bit of license here, but it really is apropos. A tribute was paid to a simple Quaker lady, Anna T. Jeans of Philadelphia, whose heart had gone out to humankind, who shunned publicity and did everything unobtrusively. It's fitting that somewhere, finally in the North, there should be a simple, modest memorial to Miss Jeans. The Pennsylvania Historical Marker, unveiled today at the entrance to Jeans Hospital and Fox Chase Cancer Center, is a well-deserved memorial for a woman with a vision to lessen human suffering in a changing America. Thank you all very much, and I know I went over my 5 minutes.
I appreciate you all inviting me out to speak at this event. Some of you all may know that I was here earlier this year. I'm relatively new as the president and CEO of the Southern Education Foundation. I've been here a year and a half, but when I took on the position, one of the things I wanted to do was connect with the great legacies that form the Southern Education Foundation. And so I sought hard to find the people of Anna Jeans, who was this woman, what drove her to do what she did. Because unquestionably, there's no person in history that has had a greater impact on the education of African Americans than Anna Jeans. I say that confidently. There's those who may be able to match her, but what Anna Jeans did for the education of African Americans nationwide is undisputed. Because let's be honest, the majority of the population of black folk, we were in the South, and that's where Anna focused her attention. So when I found you guys earlier this year, Mark, and you all invited me up to spend some time with you, I began to get a little glimpse of what this great woman was all about. So unquestionably, the Southern Education Foundation, I'm not bragging, but the reality is that the Southern Education Foundation and all of its variations and its forms, whether it was the Peabody Fund, the Slater Fund, the Jeans Fund, and eventually the consolidation that formed the Southern Education Foundation, led the way of building the schools and buying the books and training the teachers for the emancipated population following the devastation of the Civil War. See, people like Anna Jeans, they always had this intense despise of enslavement, of the institution of slavery. People like Susan B. Anthony, whose speeches I read, and she referred to it as the abomination of desolation, and couldn't understand how a Christian community could live with itself with this. So when the dust settles and the war is over and the people are free, it was philanthropists from the North, the George Peabodys, the John Slaters, and ultimately the Anna Jeans that did what the federal government wasn't doing. The Reconstruction effort at that time was aimed at rebuilding Richmond and Atlanta, and these towns were destroyed. The railroads were ripped up, and this war had to be paid for. And so the education of this large, massive population of people who have been enslaved for 200 years failed to philanthropists from the North. Anna Jeans picked up that mantle and started the Jeans Fund. The other day, I had to pull out the seal of the Southern Education Foundation. We recently moved our endowment to another fund manager, and all the paperwork involved. And I had to, my secretary had to find the seal. And on the seal of the Southern Education Foundation, it says Southern Education Foundation. It says Peabody Fund, Slater Fund, Jeans Fund. And without question, the most dominant fund that has moved the Southern Education Foundation over the years is the Jeans Fund. I'm glad to be amongst my brothers and sisters here at the hospital because we're all children of Anna Jeans. But in 1907, when she made that gift to this hospital, she also made that gift to form the Jeans Fund, which became the Southern Education Foundation. But what I consider as, and I'm an old business lawyer, and I've been around a little while, but it doesn't take a lot to understand how that gift was able to have the outstanding impact it had in terms of educating the South. I mean, principles that came out of the Jeans teachers have been applied nationwide and worldwide. The supervision of public education in the South was being done by the Jeans Fund. There was no state action in Tennessee and Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, the Carolinas. There was no state involvement in terms of how these school districts that were beginning to pop up. Keep in mind, the Horace Mann movement up north did not exist in the South. It was the Jeans Fund that created public education in the South. And who was going to manage that? How can you get standards and principles? It was the Jeans Fund, the Jeans teachers, the Jeans supervisors. Up until 1950, states like Tennessee were still having their public education in the South, not just for black folks, but for white folks too, managed by Jeans supervisors. Their principles. So you just cannot deny that impact. I could go on and on and on because I wish I could have met this lady. Really, just talk with her. Because obviously she influenced people to not only do the right thing in her Christian and her Quaker values, but to do it in an executive, strategic manner that would have a long-standing impact that she has. So as much as I love to talk about, the Southern Education Foundation and the organization that I am now proud to lead, I said to the folks of the Friends Fiduciary Society and Jeans Foundation when I found you guys, I think it was Rosemarie Shagel, she's here, yeah, somebody found a press release that you all put out, and we called her and she found me and put us together, put Dr. Hurwitz and I together. So I thought, when I came out to see you guys in March earlier this year, for some strange reason I felt that I should report to you all about what the funds from Anna Jeans have done over these years. They've done well, they're going to continue to do well, and we're so glad to be a part of this family. So thank you all, God bless you for having me out. Appreciate it.
And now I'd like to invite everybody to join us for the unveiling of the marker.